She wasn't supposed to write anything. She was supposed to mop the floor, then disappear, like every night before. But that night, the chalk moved first. The halls of Braylock University slept under yellow light and heavy silence. It was 1:42 a.m., and the marble corridors that echoed with brilliance by day now held only dust, old coffee, and the quiet scrape of Rachel Moore's cartwheels as they rolled across the tiles. She didn't wear a name tag. No one asked her name. She was the janitor, invisible in a building built to remember names. Rachel moved methodically, gloved hands wiping down the smooth surfaces outside lecture halls she never entered. Outside room 203, she paused, pulled the bin bag tighter, adjusted her hoodie. The smell of dry marker, chalk, and ink lingered like ghosts from a different world, a world that had once been hers before it folded shut. 7 years ago, Rachel had a name in the math world, at least a small one. Mathletes, Olympiads, state trophies, a perfect SAT. She even had an acceptance letter from MIT. But then her mother got sick. Stage 4, no insurance. Rachel left school in March. By April, she was working nights. By June, she had stopped solving problems entirely. Until tonight. Room 203 was dark, but not empty. Through the glass slit in the door, a lamp still glowed inside. That was unusual. She hesitated. The door creaked softly as she pushed it open with her shoulder. A triangle of light spilled over rows of empty desks, climbing toward the massive chalkboard at the front. That's when she saw it. Equations. Dozens of them. Dense. Staggered. Elegant. Not scribbles or lecture notes, but something more deliberate. They curved across the board like constellations, drawn by a steady hand. At the bottom, a boxed-in statement. Hildebrandt conjecture, still unsolved. Rachel's breath caught. She knew it. Not deeply, but she had read about it once in a worn-out library book. A decades-old problem in topology and algebraic geometry, no known proof, multiple failed approaches, the kind of thing you left to journals and men in tweed. She should have walked away, emptied the trash, mopped and moved on. But something shifted in her chest, an ache, or maybe a memory. She looked down. A piece of white chalk sat on the lectern, whole, clean, as if waiting. Her hand moved before her doubt caught up. The first line came slowly, the inverse condition for one of the constraint sets. Then a nested assumption that she remembered reading in a PDF lecture series on homological algebra. She paused, checked it mentally, then kept going. Her writing was small, careful, off to the side, like a whisper written down. It wasn't that she was trying to solve it, not really. It was more like listening to the math, to the rhythm she thought she'd forgotten. Each line led her to the next. Patterns emerged, faded, reshaped. Her brain stretched in a way it hadn't in years, like waking a limb gone numb. She didn't erase anything. She wouldn't dare. She worked around the professor's markings, building gently, like laying stones beside a stream instead of damming it. An hour passed. By the time she stepped back, the board was filled corner to corner. Her section, a narrow column on the right, held something strange, unexpected. A step no textbook had offered, yet it clicked. She stared. It wasn't perfect. It needed tightening, verification, but it was coherent, and it went somewhere the others hadn't, somewhere new. Rachel's eyes were glassy. She reached into her backpack and pulled out a crumpled notebook. Years old, the pages soft from wear. She copied her steps, folded the page, slid it into the back pocket of her jeans. And then she looked around, as if waking from a trance. Silence. The board stood before her, luminous in chalk and possibility. And for a moment, she didn't feel like a janitor. She felt close. Close to something she couldn't name. She picked up her mop again. As she turned off the light and pulled the door gently shut, she whispered, "Tomorrow, it'll be gone." And she was right. But what Rachel didn't know was that the classroom's motion-activated security camera, quietly blinking red in the corner, had recorded everything. It took her 1 hour to write it, and him 10 seconds to wipe it away. The morning sun poured through the high, stained-glass windows of Braylock University like warm judgment. Professor Kenneth Ward strode through the tiled corridor, leather shoes tapping with academic authority. It was 7:12 a.m., and the building had just begun to wake, the way a cathedral hums before the sermon begins. Kenneth adjusted the lapel of his charcoal blazer, clutching a slim folder under his arm. His mind was on the symposium he'd be presenting at in 2 weeks. The Hildebrandt conjecture would be part of his closing remarks, not as a solved theorem, but as a symbol of enduring mystery. A poetic flourish, the perfect academic punctuation. When he reached room 203, he pushed the door open and froze. The chalkboard. It was covered, not with doodles or graffiti, but with dense, intricate mathematics. Some of it was his, from yesterday's lecture, but much of it was not. His eyes narrowed. A second hand had written here. He stepped closer, scanned the new additions. Line after line, careful, elegant, absurd. Whoever had written this had touched the Hildebrandt conjecture in a way that was unsettling. And wrong, obviously. It had to be wrong. Because if it weren't, it would mean someone had solved a 70-year-old problem on a whim in the dead of night, on a public board, no less. Without a name. Without permission. He snorted quietly. "Amateurs," he muttered. Then picked up the eraser. The chalk squealed against the blackboard as the first line disappeared. Then the next, and the next. 10 seconds later, Rachel's work was gone, reduced to a fine white dust on the sleeve of a man who never questioned his place in the hierarchy of brilliance. Behind him, the door opened. Rachel stood in the doorway with her cleaning cart, lips slightly parted, mop in one hand, the other clenched tight at her side. She hadn't expected him to be here, not this early. Kenneth turned without shame. "Next time you see a mess like that, clean it up before faculty arrives." She said nothing. Her throat burned, her hands shook. He walked past her without another glance. She could feel the chalk dust still floating in the air, like the ashes of something that had never been allowed to catch fire. She entered the room, her shoes quiet against the linoleum, and stared at the board. Blank. A part of her had expected it. But seeing it, the empty, freshly erased surface, it still cut deeper than she was prepared for. She reached into her pocket and touched the folded page. It was still there. Still safe. But somehow, it felt smaller now. Less real. That night, after her shift ended, she returned to the same room. This time, she sat alone with her notebook and tried to reconstruct what she'd done the night before. But the energy was different now. The spark that had moved through her, it was distant. Fragile. Like trying to remember a dream from childhood. She stared at her own handwriting, now faded from the original page, and felt foolish. Who did she think she was? A janitor? A dropout? She wasn't supposed to be here. And then something shifted. She wasn't alone. In the shadows at the back of the room stood a figure, a woman, tall and poised, arms crossed. "I saw the footage," she said. Rachel turned, startled. The woman stepped into the light. She was younger than most of the tenured crowd. Early 30s, sharp-eyed, wrapped in a navy peacoat. "I'm Dr. Maya Brooks," she said. "I teach across the hall. Security sent me the footage by mistake. They thought it was a student sneaking in." Rachel's face flushed. "I wasn't trying to—" "I know," Maya interrupted gently. "You weren't trying to show off, you were just thinking out loud. In chalk." Rachel looked down. "It wasn't right. I mean, I'm not even sure what I did." Maya pulled out a flash drive. "Well, I saved it," she said. "And I think you should look at it again." Rachel blinked. "I don't understand." Maya paused, then said, "What you wrote might not be wrong." Rachel's breath caught. "You really think that?" "I think," Maya said softly, "that someone should have asked you why you stopped solving problems years ago. And I think it's time we start asking now." She didn't mean to challenge a legacy. She only wanted to know if she still mattered. The following morning, Maya sat alone at her desk, sipping lukewarm coffee as the sun lifted itself over the red brick rooftops of Braylock University. The flash drive sat next to her laptop, inert, ordinary, and entirely revolutionary. She had watched the clip at least 5 times by now, watched how the girl moved, not just with accuracy, but with something harder to define: intuition. The kind that doesn't come from coursework. The kind that can't be taught. She clicked send. The email was addressed to Dr. Lloyd Banner, an emeritus professor and current chair of the Braylock Mathematics Review Committee. She kept the subject line spare. Subject: Hildebrandt conjecture. Anonymized solution. She attached a single PDF. No name, no background. Just the scanned solution, formatted by hand, line by line, including notations that only someone deeply fluent in nonlinear algebraic structures would use fluently. She didn't include Rachel's name. Not yet. That wasn't hers to reveal. By afternoon, the department was buzzing. Dr. Banner forwarded the solution to 3 senior members of the faculty. 2 dismissed it immediately, but the third, Dr. Eileen Cho, paused. She cross-referenced one of the reduction steps with a method she'd seen used in a paper on pattern collapses in modular topologies. The structure wasn't traditional. It was better. By 3:17 p.m., 5 faculty members were quietly gathered in a side room off the math library. The PDF was projected on the wall, and red pens clicked open. Kenneth Ward arrived late. "What's this about?" he asked, barely looking up from his phone. "We received an anonymous submission," said Dr. Banner, who was now standing. "Unsolicited, yes, but it touches the Hildebrandt problem." Kenneth scoffed. "Everyone's trying to touch that problem. Most of them don't deserve chalk." "Then take a look at page 6, Dr. Cho said, sliding him a copy. Kenneth took the printout, eyes skimming the page, then slowing. He blinked. His mouth opened slightly but said nothing. Dr. Banner leaned back. "Recognize anything?" Kenneth set the page down. "The formatting is erratic. It's not academic." "But is it correct?" Cho asked. Kenneth paused. "It might be. But the step here," he pointed to the margin. "This isn't how we approach limit behavior in nested topologies. It's creative," Cho said. "No," Kenneth said flatly. "It's reckless." That evening, Rachel sat across from Maya in a quiet, off-campus cafe. Her janitor's jacket hung behind her on the chair. She wore the only other outfit she owned, a soft cotton shirt and clean jeans. "I don't understand," Rachel said, hands wrapped around a teacup. "You sent it in." "I anonymized it," Maya said. "No one knows it's you, but they're reading it, and they're confused." Rachel's brow furrowed. "Is that good?" "In math?" Maya smiled. "It's the best start you can hope for." Rachel's eyes were tired, but beneath them, a small flicker of something was starting to stir, the beginnings of belief. Back in his office, Kenneth stared at the printout again. He had made notes. Dozens. Arrows, circles, question marks. But no holes. Not really. The logic was tight, unnervingly so. He stood, walked to his bookshelf, and pulled down his own lecture notes from a decade ago. In the margin of one page, barely visible in pencil, was a discarded thought, a route he had once considered and abandoned. This anonymous solution had followed that route and finished it. That's when it clicked. The handwriting. He stepped into the hallway, walked briskly to the security office, and requested footage from room 203. The receptionist hesitated. "That request would need to go through—" "I am the senior professor in the building," Kenneth snapped. "Just pull it." 10 minutes later, he was staring at the screen. The grainy black and white footage showed Rachel, mop in hand, entering the room. Then stopping, then picking up the chalk, then solving. His face went pale. The next morning, Dr. Banner called an emergency departmental meeting. Kenneth arrived first, silent, followed by Maya and Cho. Banner stood with the PDF in hand. "It's been verified. The solution holds. It's original. And it's unlike anything we've seen in this department in decades." Kenneth looked up. "Do we know who wrote it?" Maya held his gaze. "Yes." The room quieted. "It was Rachel Moore," she said. "She works nights here. She's a janitor." Silence followed. A deep, complicated silence. Dr. Cho exhaled softly. Dr. Banner's brows lifted, but he said nothing. Only Kenneth spoke. "She had no right to that board." "She didn't ask for it," Maya replied. "She just saw something no one else did." Kenneth rose, slowly. "So we reward insubordination now?" "No," Maya said quietly. "We recognize brilliance, wherever it hides." Outside the conference room, Rachel stood in the hallway, unable to hear them. Her fingers tightened around the strap of her bag. She didn't know what was happening inside, only that she was being talked about, judged, measured by people she would never dare to look in the eye. And yet, something inside her refused to shrink. Because for the first time in years, someone had read what she wrote and hadn't laughed. And for now, that was enough. It wasn't a conference. It wasn't a press release. It was one leaked PDF, and the silence that followed was louder than any applause. 3 days after the faculty meeting, the paper appeared online. No author, no context. Just a 32-page scanned document hosted on a mathematics forum frequented by researchers, students, and obsessives alike. It was posted under the username Ghost Chalk, with a caption that simply read, "Alternative take on Hildebrandt. Open for discussion." Within 24 hours, it had been downloaded over 3,000 times. By day 3, it had hit the inboxes of 2 Fields medalists. Rachel didn't know. Not at first. She had gone back to work like nothing had happened. The mop moved across the floor with muscle memory. Her earbuds played soft, wordless music, the kind that filled in silence without demanding anything. But something had shifted. Professors paused a little longer when passing her in the hall. One student, a lanky sophomore in a Newton hoodie, gave her a nod that looked almost like recognition. Maya hadn't told her about the leak. Not yet. She wanted to wait until she knew where it came from. It wasn't her. It wasn't Rachel. And Kenneth Ward, for all his bitterness, wasn't careless enough to leak it himself. That left one other possibility. Dr. Eileen Cho. When Maya confronted her in the corridor outside the faculty lounge, Eileen didn't flinch. "I didn't attach a name," she said. "You uploaded confidential faculty materials." "I uploaded math," Cho replied, "and brilliance that would have been buried otherwise." Maya exhaled, trying to keep her voice steady. "Do you know what this means for her?" Eileen looked away. "Do you know what it means for us?" By Friday, Twitter, or rather math Twitter, was aflame. Threads dissecting the proof, screenshots of Step 11, a side-by-side breakdown comparing the approach to Hildebrandt's original notes from the 1950s. People didn't just admire the work, they were in awe of it. A few called it a hoax, but others defended it fiercely. "Whoever wrote this," one professor tweeted, "didn't just understand the conjecture, they felt it." Speculation began to swirl. Was it a prank by graduate students? A long-lost notebook scanned by an eccentric heir? Or worse, an AI hallucination? No one guessed Janitor. Not yet. On Saturday morning, Maya knocked on the small apartment door above Delgado's diner. Rachel answered in socks, her hair tied back, and circles under her eyes. "Morning," Maya said gently. "Can I come in?" Rachel nodded and stepped aside. They sat on the edge of the small sofa. A bowl of cold oatmeal rested on the coffee table, half-eaten. "I need to tell you something," Maya said. "But first, promise me you'll breathe." Rachel blinked. Maya took out her phone and handed it to her. On the screen was a post from a university math forum. At the top, a download link. Beneath it, 100 comments. "What is this?" Rachel asked. "It's yours." Rachel stared. "You mean—" "It was leaked anonymously. It's gone viral in the math world." A long silence. Rachel's hands trembled slightly. "People think it's real?" "They're not just thinking, they're analyzing, comparing, defending it." Rachel looked up. "But I don't even know if it's complete." "That's the part they love," Maya said. "It dares, it wanders, it shows a mind that wasn't trying to impress, just trying to understand." Rachel set the phone down slowly. "I didn't want any of this." "I know," Maya whispered, "but sometimes the work decides for us." Meanwhile, in his office, Kenneth Ward stood alone. He had printed the entire thread. Red ink bled across the margins, circles, underlines, comments. One line repeated more than the others. "This changes everything." He picked up the phone. "I want a meeting with the provost." "For what purpose?" the secretary asked. "To discuss academic authorship," he said, teeth clenched, "and institutional integrity." Sunday morning brought headlines. "Anonymous paper may have cracked 70-year-old problem. Scientific Post. Mystery mathematician shocks academic world. Chronicle of Higher Ed. Proof with no name. The math that just won't be ignored. Vox Science." And finally, one tweet that broke the silence. @BraylockU. "Can you confirm or deny authorship?" No response. But in the janitorial closet of the science building, Rachel stood very still. Because her phone had just buzzed. and the message was from someone she hadn't spoken to in over 4 years. "Is this you?" The name on the screen was her estranged father. She stared at it, and for the first time since all this began, she didn't feel like disappearing. She felt like answering. They said it without saying it, with glances, with silence, with the way chairs were arranged. Rachel stood just outside room 407, hands trembling slightly, staring at the polished plaque that read, "Departmental Colloquium, Special Session." Inside, 15 faculty members sat around an oval table, murmuring, a pitcher of water, a stack of stapled printouts, and at the far end, Kenneth Ward, unmoving, arms folded. Maya stood at Rachel's side. "You don't have to do this," she whispered. "I do," Rachel replied. Together, they stepped in. The room hushed. Maya cleared her throat. "This is Rachel Moore." No one clapped. 1 or 2 heads nodded faintly. Someone shifted uncomfortably. "She's the author of the paper circulating online," Maya continued. A pause. "She shouldn't be in the room," Kenneth said, voice low but firm. Dr. Cho turned. "She shouldn't? Or you don't want her to be?" Kenneth didn't blink. "She's not faculty, not a student, not even an applicant." "She's a thinker," Cho countered. "That's more than I can say for some." "Enough," said Dr. Banner, raising a hand. "Let's begin." For the next 45 minutes, Rachel stood near the whiteboard as Maya walked through her solution, step by step. Each transition, each notation. Cho interjected occasionally to add context. Kenneth remained stone-faced. At one point, Dr. Adwell, a quiet, aging theorist, leaned forward. "Did you develop step 19 yourself?" Rachel hesitated. "Not consciously. I followed the shape of the logic until it curved." A few brows lifted. "That's not a mathematical term," Kenneth said. "It's not your kind of mathematics," Cho shot back. After the presentation, the faculty turned to one another in small, hushed clusters. Rachel felt the distance return, like glass thickening between her and the room. Until Dr. Banner finally asked, "So what now?" Kenneth answered first. "We can't officially endorse it. The paper was leaked. The author is not academically affiliated. It opens the university to scrutiny, even legal exposure." "And if it's right?" someone murmured. Kenneth shrugged. "Right isn't enough. Not in this system." Maya's jaw clenched. "So truth needs credentials to exist now?" "It needs context," Kenneth replied. "It needs accountability." "She's standing right here," Maya said. "She's standing in the wrong place," Kenneth said. "This university is built on peer review, admission standards, and formal channels. If we unravel that, what are we?" There was a beat of silence. Then Rachel spoke. "You're scared," she said quietly. All heads turned. "You're scared because I didn't ask your permission, because I didn't come through the door you built." Kenneth didn't respond, but the room felt heavier. Rachel looked down. "I never wanted to be in this room. I just wanted to understand something." She picked up her bag. "And I still do." Outside, the spring wind caught her hair as she stepped into the sunlight. Maya followed her down the steps. "That was brave." "I wasn't trying to be." "Then that's why it was." Back inside, Kenneth lingered as the room emptied. Cho stood near the window. "You know she's right." Kenneth turned slowly. "She embarrassed us. You don't see that?" "No," Cho said. "She revealed us." Kenneth stared at the board, still covered in Rachel's notations. He picked up the eraser, then stopped, and set it down again. It wasn't just about the math anymore. It was about who was allowed to matter. 2 weeks passed. The story refused to die. Mathematics journals had started requesting formal publication rights. A documentary filmmaker reached out to the university asking to speak with the mystery mathematician. The hashtag #GhostChalk trended for 3 days straight. And then it happened. An invitation arrived. It wasn't addressed to Maya, it wasn't addressed to Kenneth, it was addressed to Rachel Moore. Stamped with the seal of the International Mathematical Society, the letter was brief. Dear Ms. Moore, we would be honored to invite you to present your solution on the Hildebrandt conjecture at our annual symposium in Geneva. We understand your unconventional path and admire the originality of your work. The community deserves to hear from you. Rachel held the letter in both hands, as if afraid it might vanish. Maya smiled. You're going to Geneva. Rachel whispered, No, I'm not. Across campus, Kenneth Ward stood in the provost's office. This is a disaster, he said flatly. She's not a representative of this university. If she speaks on that stage, people will assume she came from here. The provost frowned. But she did. She's a janitor, Kenneth snapped. She's a mathematician, the provost replied, and the world sees her that way now. Kenneth leaned forward. If we legitimize her, we delegitimize every structure we've built. And maybe, the provost said gently, those structures need revisiting. That evening, Rachel sat in Maya's apartment, staring at the plane ticket. I don't belong in Geneva, she said. Maya poured tea. You belong wherever your voice is heard. Rachel shook her head. What if I fail? What if they laugh? They already tried, Maya said softly. And you're still standing. Unbeknownst to them, Kenneth was making calls. Not openly, quietly. To former colleagues in Geneva. To a liaison at the society. He didn't say Rachel's name, only referred to an unvetted submission and a credibility risk to the symposium. He wanted the invitation rescinded, but the fire had already spread too far. A week later, a press release was issued. This year's symposium will feature a groundbreaking presentation by Rachel Moore, whose anonymous solution has reignited global interest in the Hildebrandt conjecture. And underneath it, her name, her real name. On the night before the flight, Rachel walked back into the same lecture hall where it all began. Room 203 was dark, quiet. She stood in front of the blackboard. She didn't write. She just placed her hand on the cold surface, closed her eyes. I'm not supposed to exist, she whispered. And for the first time, she didn't believe that voice anymore. She didn't raise her voice. She just raised the chalk, and the whole room forgot how to breathe. The auditorium in Geneva was nothing like room 203. It soared upward in marble and glass, sunlight filtering through geometric skylights that looked like tessellated diamonds. Every seat was filled. Cameras rolled. Translators stood ready in glass booths. Rachel stood behind the podium, fingers trembling slightly. A microphone blinked red in front of her. She looked out over the crowd, experts, skeptics, dreamers, enemies, and, somewhere in the third row, Kenneth Ward. She took a breath. I don't have credentials, she began, and I don't have degrees. I'm not here to prove I belong. I'm here to share what I saw. A beat of silence. Then she turned to the blackboard. The problem was familiar. Hildebrandt's conjecture, unsolved for 70 years. But Rachel didn't write numbers. She began with a shape, a spiral. It unfurled slowly, looping outward, intersecting faintly with radiating lines. She added symbols, notations that didn't follow the traditional order, but echoed a kind of musical symmetry. Gasps echoed through the room. Dr. Bouchard leaned forward. She's visualizing the convergence zone? Another scholar whispered, It's topological, but recursive? Kenneth crossed his arms tightly. Rachel paused only once to look out into the crowd. My mistake, she said, was thinking the answer had to look like theirs. She turned back to the board. And their mistake was assuming it couldn't look like mine. For 35 minutes, Rachel guided them through the diagram, tracing pathways, intersections, paradoxical folds that somehow resolved cleanly. She referenced one thing, intuition, and it struck the room like thunder. She wasn't dismantling mathematics. She was humanizing it. When she stepped away from the board, the moderator hesitated, then finally said, We welcome questions. The first came from an elderly man with white hair and no nameplate. I've taught for 50 years, he said, and I've never understood the core behavior of that series. Until now. The second came from a doctoral student in Brazil via live stream. How did you know to begin with the spiral? Rachel smiled. Because that's how I saw it. Not in equations, in motion, in breath. Kenneth stood. A hush fell. I have a question, he said. Rachel looked up. Did Maya Brooks help you write this? Rachel met his eyes. No, he nodded. Then I owe you an apology. The auditorium stood. Not one person clapped at first, but then it rose, wave after wave of standing ovation until the sound of it shook the ceiling. Rachel didn't bow. She just looked at the chalk-streaked board, still glowing with possibility. She had no title, no funding, no institution. But in that moment, she was the most listened-to mathematician in the world. Backstage, Maya waited. When Rachel stepped through the curtain, Maya opened her arms. Rachel fell into them. You were born for this, Maya whispered. Rachel exhaled against her shoulder. I think I finally believe that. The problem wasn't that she didn't belong to a university. The problem was that the truth did. Within 48 hours of Rachel's talk, every major mathematics journal in the world reached out, some begging, others demanding. The Hildebrandt conjecture was broken. The proof wasn't theoretical anymore. It was real. It was elegant. It was Rachel's. But there was a problem. She had no affiliation. And now, the institutions didn't know what to do with her. The first journal to publish a summary used the phrase, a breakthrough from outside the ivory tower. Another called her a self-taught visionary. But a third wrote, the mathematical community must tread carefully. While Ms. Moore's insights are undoubtedly novel, we cannot abandon peer review and formal training in favor of populist enthusiasm. Rachel read that line 3 times. Populist enthusiasm. She closed the tab. Offers began pouring in. Tenured positions, honorary degrees, think tank fellowships, talk show appearances, a publishing deal, even a Netflix docu-series in development. Maya read them out loud from the couch, eyes wide. Yale, Stanford, even MIT. Rachel sat at the kitchen table, staring at a blank envelope. I didn't do this to be on TV, she said quietly. I know, Maya replied. But you changed something, Rachel. They want a piece of it. Rachel's hands were shaking again. She turned the envelope over, revealing the return address. National Medal of Science Committee. The next morning, Rachel gave her answer. She turned down every position, every title, every honorary invitation, and she posted one public letter. I am grateful for the recognition, but I did not solve this to be accepted by the institutions that once erased me. I am building something else, something without gates, without permission. I want to teach, not at your podiums, but at kitchen tables, park benches, community halls. I want to find the minds who never thought they belonged, because they do, and they always did. The world froze, then it exploded. Social media flooded with a new hashtag. No institution. A movement was born. Rachel wasn't alone. Stories poured in, of janitors who invented engines, of waitresses who sketched fractals on receipts, of prisoners who reinvented number theory. Suddenly, Rachel wasn't a fluke. She was a mirror. A month later, Rachel and Maya signed the lease for a small building outside Chicago. Peeling walls, broken windows, but good bones. A sign hung on the door. The Open Proof Collective. Inside, folding tables, blank chalkboards, free coffee. No entrance exam. People came. Old men with notebooks, children with too many questions, single moms, community college dropouts. One retired librarian who hadn't done math in 30 years but remembered a theorem from memory and began crying as she wrote it out again. Rachel didn't teach like a professor. She taught like someone who'd fought to understand and won. One day, a young girl came in, 10 years old, holding a crumpled piece of paper with symbols no one else could read. Rachel sat down beside her. The girl looked up. Is this math? Rachel smiled. No, she whispered. This is a beginning. She changed the proof. They tried to change the history. It started with a journal footnote. In the April issue of the Annals of Pure Mathematics, an article appeared summarizing the Hildebrandt solution. It cited Rachel's proof, but her name was absent from the author list. Instead, it read, as formalized by Kenneth Ward and colleagues based on an anonymous prior draft. Rachel read it 3 times. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She printed it, folded it, and walked out into the morning sun. Maya slammed the journal on the table. He's trying to rewrite it. Pretend you were just an echo. Rachel shrugged. I expected it. But it's your name, Maya said, voice shaking. On your proof. Rachel sat down slowly. He's not erasing me. He's erasing himself. The internet didn't take kindly to it. Screenshots of the article spread fast. Hashtags ignited again. Credit her. Name the mind. Former students of Kenneth began speaking up about silenced ideas, buried contributions, years of gatekeeping. A journalist at The Atlantic published an exposé titled, The Ghost in the Footnote. Rachel refused interviews, but the noise kept growing, until it reached Geneva. An official correction was issued 3 weeks later. We regret the misattribution. The original solution of the Hildebrandt conjecture was written and discovered by Rachel Moore. All future references will be updated. But the damage had been done, and something deeper had broken. That night, Rachel stood in front of the chalkboard at the collective. A young student had asked, how do you stay calm when people try to steal what you did? Rachel looked at the girl. I don't fight to be remembered, she said. I fight to make it impossible to forget what's possible. She drew a spiral, just one. The girl asked, is that math? Rachel smiled. It's a reminder. Across the country, schools began introducing Rachel's diagram into their curriculum, not just as a solution, but as a story of resistance, of visibility, of a name they couldn't erase. And in one quiet office, Kenneth Ward looked at the chalkboard he once erased, now framed and mounted behind glass in the university's main atrium. He didn't speak, but he didn't turn away either. Some theorems live in textbooks. Others live in people. It had been exactly 1 year since Rachel Moore first picked up a piece of chalk in that quiet lecture hall. The Open Proof Collective had outgrown its little building. They now had 3 satellite classrooms and a small scholarship fund, mostly crowdsourced from strangers who wrote things like, "For the girl who taught my daughter she belonged." But Rachel remained the same. Denim jacket, chalk-stained fingers, and that gentle way of listening that made people speak even before they knew what they wanted to say. On the anniversary of her first proof, Maya organized a gathering at the original building. Former students, volunteers, local journalists, all filled the room with folding chairs and soft laughter. Someone wheeled in a cake shaped like a spiral. Someone else read poems inspired by prime numbers. Rachel sat in the back. She didn't like stages. But they made her come forward anyway. When Rachel stepped up, she didn't have a speech, only a folded envelope. "I received this 2 days ago," she said, "from someone I hadn't heard from in a very long time." She opened it carefully. "Rachel, I saw your name again. And this time, not on a police form. I was a terrible father. I ran. But I never stopped believing you were extraordinary. Your mother always said, she sees the world differently. I used to think that was a problem. Now I think, maybe you were just early. I'm proud of you. I hope someday we can meet again. Dad." There was a silence. Rachel didn't cry. She smiled, folded the letter, and placed it beside the chalkboard. After the event, she stayed behind to clean. Old habit. A little girl, no more than 9, walked in. "Are you the chalk lady?" Rachel crouched beside her. "I guess I am." The girl handed her a sheet of paper, dense with spirals and question marks and tiny numbers. Rachel studied it. "You want to know if this means anything?" The girl nodded. Rachel tore off a piece of chalk and offered it. "Let's find out." And they knelt, side by side, drawing possibilities. The next proof was already beginning, but this time, she wasn't alone. To every reader who has ever been overlooked, underestimated, or told they didn't belong, this story is for you. Rachel Moore may be fictional, but her spirit lives in classrooms, kitchens, night shifts, and quiet corners around the world. Genius isn't always loud. It isn't always credentialed. Sometimes it's just a whisper in chalk that refuses to be erased. May we all keep listening for those voices. And may we make room for them, not just in math, but in everything. The author,